The sky above Zephora glowed with 1,000 colors like liquid crystal melting into the horizon. The floating mountains hung suspended in the air, connected by bridges of pure energy that shimmered in the light. It was a world unlike any other in the galaxy, beautiful, mysterious, and strictly ruled by tradition. Among its rulers was Princess Leora, the heir to the Oran throne, a young alien of grace, intelligence, and remarkable psychic ability. Leora walked along the palace corridor, her long silver hair flowing behind her like a river of light. Her mind buzzed with thoughts of the upcoming ceremony. Today she would meet her human husband Ethan for the first time in person. Humans were rare visitors to Zephora. Their race was small, fragile, and untested against the vast dangers of the universe. The Council believed a human ambassador might help strengthen Zephora's alliances with Earth. But the idea of a marriage, her marriage to a human, made Leora's pulse quicken with uncertainty. Ethan entered the palace with a quiet confidence. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair and eyes that shone with curiosity and intelligence. Unlike the Oran, he had no shimmering aura, no psychic presence, nothing that marked him as extraordinary in appearance. He smiled politely, bowing deeply to Leora. Leora's first impression was clear. He was harmless, fragile, gentle. Surely no human could survive the complexities and dangers of an alien world like Zephora, much less command respect in the royal court. She found herself relaxing, thinking that if humans were truly this harmless, this union could be simple. The ceremony took place in the palace's grand hall, a vast space carved from luminous crystal. Floating orbs of light danced above, casting rainbows on the walls. Guests from across the galaxy attended, Oran nobles, distant ambassadors, and curious scholars. Ethan fumbled through the ceremonial robes, tripping once and nearly colliding with a hovering servant. Leora couldn't help but hide a small smile. Humans are delicate, she whispered to herself. Ethan straightened, a faint blush coloring his cheeks, and murmured, "I am honored to be here, Princess Leora. Your world is breathtaking," the court murmured. The Oran were proud of their intelligence and grace, and humans, in their eyes, seemed awkward and limited. They exchanged questioning glances, unsure if this marriage was wise. The first days of Ethan's stay were filled with formalities. He learned the Oran customs quickly enough, though not perfectly. He held the ceremonial cup at the wrong angle, bowed too deeply, and occasionally answered questions with humor that made the elders frown. Yet there was something in his demeanor that caught Leora's attention. He was calm under scrutiny, polite under pressure, and curiously observant. He watched the floating creatures in the palace gardens not with fear, but fascination. He asked questions that even the council had not considered. One evening, Leora walked with him through the gardens, the air filled with the scent of alien flowers that shimmered in the night. The floating orbs of light reflected in Ethan's eyes, making them sparkle. "Do you like it here?" Leora asked, her voice soft. Ethan nodded. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. But there's something about it, something I feel I could understand if I took the time." Leora paused, intrigued. Humans were meant to be fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in his words, a calm certainty she hadn't expected. She shook her head, telling herself it was a trick of perspective. He was still a human, and humans were supposed to be harmless. Days turned into weeks. Ethan participated in lessons on Oran history, culture, and diplomacy. He was clumsy at first, struggling to hold the hovering writing tools or pronouncing the Oran names incorrectly. Yet he learned quickly. Leora watched as he adapted to challenges that many native Oran found difficult. One afternoon, the palace alarms went off unexpectedly. A minor security breach had occurred. An intruder tried to access the royal archives. The Oran guards reacted immediately, but the intruder was clever, avoiding detection. While the guards debated the next move, Ethan stepped forward. "Wait," he said. "Don't rush. Let me think." The guards looked at him skeptically. Humans were fragile, easy to intimidate, and surely could not handle such a situation. But Ethan quietly studied the palace layout, noticed patterns in the intruder's movements, and gave instructions that made perfect sense. Within minutes, the intruder was contained without anyone getting hurt. Leora's eyes widened. So you solved it?" she whispered. Ethan shrugged. "It wasn't hard. I just looked at it differently." The incident spread quickly through the court. Whispers of the human's ingenuity filled the palace halls. Leora felt a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Her husband, harmless as she thought, was quietly capable of things that even Auran elders struggled with. The next challenge came unexpectedly. During a diplomatic dinner, a visiting ambassador made a pointed remark about humans being weak and fragile. The comment could have sparked outrage, but Ethan smiled politely. Instead of reacting defensively, he asked a simple question about the ambassador's homeworld technology. When the ambassador tried to respond, Ethan's question exposed a flaw in their system, embarrassing them without insult. The room went silent. Leora realized humans had a strength unlike the Auran. It was not psychic power nor the ability to manipulate energy. It was flexibility, creativity, an ability to think differently, to solve problems without force. Her husband's harmlessness was misleading. That night, Leora could not sleep. She gazed out at the floating mountains, their colors reflecting her swirling thoughts. She had married a human believing he was fragile, delicate, and entirely unthreatening. Yet in every subtle action, every clever solution, he revealed an unexpected depth. Perhaps humans were underestimated. Perhaps their greatest strength was hidden beneath their gentle appearance. Over the next few weeks, Leora began noticing small, uncanny moments. Ethan instinctively repaired broken devices that baffled Auran engineers. He navigated complex social situations with ease, understanding emotions and motives better than some Auran with centuries of experience. He remained polite, gentle, and seemingly harmless, but his intelligence and intuition were undeniable. One afternoon, Leora accompanied him to the palace library. A set of ancient Auran texts lay scattered across a table, their content obscure even to trained scholars. Ethan glanced over them and with quiet confidence began piecing together their meaning. By the end of the day, he had discovered connections between texts that had eluded Auran researchers for decades. Leora could hardly believe it. She had married a man she thought harmless, but he was extraordinary. Despite all this, Ethan remained humble. He never boasted, never flaunted his talent, and never threatened anyone. That gentle, harmless demeanor he carried was not weakness, it was a choice. A human choice. And Leora realized that strength could take many forms, not just the obvious. As the days passed, the palace prepared for the next stage of the royal union, a tour of Zephora's floating mountains, meant to showcase the human's ability to adapt to alien environments. The council doubted Ethan could handle the heights, the energy fields, and the unpredictable terrain. Leora, too, felt apprehensive. Yet she knew something deep within her told her this human might surprise them all. The sun set over Zephora, casting long beams of color across the crystal city. Leora stood beside Ethan, watching the horizon. For the first time, she felt a shift in her understanding, not just of humans, but of strength itself. Her human husband, whom she had believed harmless, was quietly remarkable. And she realized that this quiet strength hidden beneath appearances could change everything, not just her perception, but perhaps the entire galaxy. As night fell, the stars above Zephora twinkled like diamonds scattered across black silk. Leora took a deep breath, knowing that her life and her understanding of the universe was about to expand far beyond what she had imagined. Her journey with Ethan, the human she had underestimated, was just beginning. The days after the royal union began peacefully enough, but the calm of Zephora's crystalline palace was slowly replaced by subtle tension. Strange incidents started to occur, small at first but unsettling in ways no one could ignore. Guards would report minor malfunctions in security fields that should have been flawless. Doors sealed by psychic locks occasionally opened without explanation. Precious items in the palace were moved, but no one could see how. Princess Leora first noticed the changes when she walked through the palace gardens with Ethan one evening. The floating flowers, normally perfectly still, swayed slightly in patterns that matched the human's footsteps, even though the air was calm. She frowned. "That's odd," she said quietly. Ethan paused, looking around with his usual calm curiosity. "Maybe the palace itself is responding to us," he said. "I've read about plants and creatures that sense emotions and movement. Maybe your plants have something similar." Leora shook her head, both amused and unsettled. "Plants that react to footsteps? You really believe that?" Ethan shrugged. "I think anything is possible if you observe carefully." The first major incident occurred a week later. The palace's energy shield, meant to protect against intruders, flickered and weakened at a critical point. The Oran Council was alarmed, but the palace's automated system showed no signs of tampering. Leora watched as the elders discussed the problem, their faces tight with worry. Ethan stepped forward. "May I?" he asked. The council exchanged doubtful glances. Humans were weak, fragile, and naive about Oran technology, yet they allowed him to approach. Ethan moved to the control panel, a complex lattice of glowing lines and floating controls. Without touching anything directly, he observed the flows of energy murmuring quietly. The Oran watched, impressed despite themselves as the humans seemed to understand the patterns in ways they could not. Finally, he gestured. "Here," he said simply. "The energy is being redirected. Not damaged, just rerouted. Something is causing interference outside the normal patterns." A junior engineer tested Ethan's theory, and the system stabilized immediately. The council stared, astonished. Leora felt a thrill of pride and amazement. Her husband, whom she had believed harmless, had just solved a problem that had confused Oran engineers for days. That evening, Leora and Ethan walked through the palace halls in silence. The corridors were quiet, the crystal walls glowing softly in the twilight. "You're not like anyone I've met," Leora said finally. "You appear harmless, and yet you understand things that even the elders struggle with." Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I just look. I listen. I think. Sometimes seeing what others miss makes all the difference." Leora nodded. She had thought humans were fragile, easily overwhelmed by the complexities of alien life. But Ethan showed her that humans were different, adaptable, clever, and quietly strong. The next strange incident was more personal. One night, Leora's private quarters were visited by an unknown figure. The intruder attempted to access restricted areas, leaving no trace but a faint shimmer in the air. Leora awoke to the sensation of being watched. Her psychic sense, usually sharp, detected something strange, something moving but not solid. Ethan, awakened by her unease, followed her instinctively. "What's wrong?" he asked. "There's someone here," Leora whispered. "I can feel it, but I can't see them." Ethan studied the shimmer carefully, noticing patterns in its movement. "They're not using brute force. They're trying to avoid detection. Clever. But they leave traces. Watch." He placed a hand on the floor, his touch gentle, yet his attention sharp. Tiny particles of energy shifted under his presence, revealing the intruder's path. Leora's eyes widened. You can sense it?" she asked, astonished. Ethan shrugged. "Not exactly sense. I just observe what is happening and look for patterns. Patterns reveal the truth." Together, they tracked the intruder to the edge of the palace grounds. By the time the Oran guards arrived, the intruder was gone. But for Leora, the incident marked a turning point. Her human husband was not fragile or harmless. He was perceptive, intuitive, and far more capable than anyone had expected. The next challenge came during a council meeting. A visiting ambassador from another planet brought a rare device, a puzzle of intricate lights and circuits. The ambassador claimed it was impossible for anyone outside their species to understand. The council watched with smug certainty as Ethan approached the device. He studied it quietly, rotating parts with careful hands. The room waited in tense silence. After several minutes, he pressed a sequence of panels, and the device activated perfectly, lights blinking in a pattern that even the ambassador admitted was correct. The council murmured in astonishment. "Impossible," whispered one elder. "He should not understand this." Ethan smiled gently. "Sometimes you just need to look differently." Leora's respect for him deepened. She realized that humans had a strength the Oran lacked, a strength not measured by psychic power or agility, but by ingenuity, patience, and creativity. Her husband's harmlessness was an illusion, masking a unique brilliance. Yet the strange incidents continued. Small accidents, alarms failing, doors opening, objects moving, kept happening throughout the palace. The Oran grew anxious, suspecting sabotage or a larger threat. Leora, meanwhile, observed Ethan carefully. He did not panic, did not demand action from the guards, but calmly studied each event, quietly piecing together patterns invisible to everyone else. One day, Leora invited him to walk along the floating bridges above the palace gardens. The wind whipped around them and the energy currents hummed beneath their feet. She asked, "Do you ever feel scared?" Ethan looked out across the floating mountains, his eyes bright. "Of course. Fear is natural. But fear doesn't control me. I observe, I plan, I act. That's how humans survive in places where danger seems impossible. Leora nodded, understanding for the first time that survival did not always require power or force. It required courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt, qualities her human husband possessed in abundance. The palace grew tense as more incidents occurred, but Ethan handled each calmly. When a minor fire broke out in a storage wing, he guided the guards efficiently, saving both property and lives. When a small energy fluctuation threatened the palace shields, he devised a solution in minutes that even the Auran Council had not considered. Leora watched, amazed. This was no longer the harmless human she had believed him to be. Every action revealed a subtle brilliance, a quiet power that demanded respect. By the end of the month, whispers spread through the palace. The human ambassador, the fragile husband, was not fragile at all. He was clever, resourceful, and capable in ways the Auran had never imagined. Leora felt a mixture of awe and admiration. Her husband had changed not only her perception, but the perception of everyone around him. One evening, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the floating mountains. The sky shimmered with countless colors reflecting in their eyes. "You are different," Leora said softly. "I thought humans were harmless. I thought you were fragile, but everything you do shows that I was wrong." Ethan smiled, his expression calm and honest. "I don't know if I'm different. I just try to see the world clearly. Sometimes that's enough to make a difference." Leora took his hand, feeling a warmth she had never felt before. Her human husband, her partner in this strange, beautiful world, was proving that strength did not always show itself on the surface. Sometimes it was hidden beneath curiosity, patience, and courage. As night fell over Zyphora, the palace glowed with soft light, and the floating mountains shimmered in the distance. The strange incidents continued, but Leora no longer felt fear. She understood now that she was not married to a harmless human. She was married to someone extraordinary, whose quiet brilliance could change the course of events in ways even the Auran could not predict. And deep in her heart, she realized that this was only the beginning. The palace, the floating mountains, and the galaxy itself would soon witness the true capabilities of her human husband. Abilities that went far beyond what anyone could imagine. Her journey with Ethan, the man she had once underestimated, was entering a new stage. A stage filled with mystery, adventure, and a growing understanding that appearances could be deceiving, and that true strength often hid behind the most unlikely faces. The palace of Zyphora had always felt secure, its crystal walls and floating energy barriers designed to keep out intruders. Yet, in the days following the strange incidents, a new sense of danger crept through the corridors. The council could feel it, a subtle tension, a quiet unease. And Princess Leora, standing by the balcony overlooking the floating mountains, sensed it too. Ethan stood beside her, calm as ever, observing the horizon. "You feel it too?" she asked. He nodded. "Something is coming. I can't see it yet, but I can sense patterns that suggest movement, hidden movement." Leora frowned. Humans were supposed to be fragile, harmless creatures. Yet here was her husband, noticing threats invisible even to the Auran, whose psychic senses were legendary. She realized once again that she had underestimated him. The warning came quietly, almost like a whisper through the palace. Sensors detected anomalies at the edge of Zyphora's floating mountains. The Auran Council convened immediately, debating the severity of the threat. "It could be a scouting mission," one elder suggested. "Or worse, a galactic faction might be testing our defenses." Ethan listened without interrupting. When the council turned to him, expecting him to be merely an observer, he spoke with quiet authority. "We should prepare but not panic. We need to understand how they move, what their goal is, and anticipate their actions. There are patterns in everything, even in an attack." The council exchanged skeptical glances. Humans were clever, perhaps, but they lacked experience in interstellar combat. Yet Ethan's calm confidence could not be ignored. That night, the palace was alive with quiet activity. Guards patrolled the corridors, energy shields hummed softly, and Auran engineers monitored every channel for unusual movement. Leora stayed close to Ethan, feeling both nervous and oddly reassured. "You always seem calm," she whispered, "even when danger is near." Ethan smiled. "Calm doesn't mean powerless. It means thinking clearly. Fear clouds judgment. Observation and action, those are what matter." The first direct threat arrived shortly after midnight. A small group of highly trained mercenaries cloaked in advanced stealth technology infiltrated the palace grounds. They moved with precision, bypassing alarms and guards alike. But Ethan noticed them immediately, not through force, but by observing the subtle disturbances they caused, shadows where there should be none, slight variations in energy fields, and the faintest shifts in air currents. "Here," he whispered to Leora, pointing toward a narrow passage. "They're moving this way. Stay close." Together they followed the intruders silently. Ethan's knowledge of patterns allowed them to anticipate the mercenaries' movements. When a guard stumbled into the corridor ahead, Ethan whispered instructions, guiding him to remain unseen while maintaining the element of surprise. Finally, they reached the inner archives where the intruders were attempting to access sensitive information. Leora's psychic senses flared, ready to attack, but Ethan raised a hand. "Wait," he said. "We can handle this without violence. Watch." He moved swiftly, using a combination of Auran technology and human intuition. He triggered a subtle diversion, causing the intruders to split and follow false paths. When they reached a dead end, automated energy nets captured them without harm. The palace was secure again. Leora's heart raced, a mixture of fear and awe. "Yeah, you didn't even touch them," she said. "And yet they couldn't get through." Ethan shrugged. "Sometimes strength isn't about fighting. It's about understanding, predicting, and acting in the right moment." The council was astonished. Humans, they had thought, were helpless compared to the psychic power and skill of the Auran. Yet here was Ethan, using intelligence, creativity, and courage to outmatch trained mercenaries. Leora realized more than ever that appearances could be deceiving. Over the next few days, the palace remained on high alert. The mercenaries' attempt had been only the beginning. Intelligence reports suggested that a galactic faction, jealous of Zyphora's floating mountains and energy resources, was planning a larger attack. The council debated evacuation, defense, and diplomacy, but Ethan offered a different solution. "We prepare the palace, yes," he said, "but we also need to act proactively. If we wait for them, we give them the advantage. I suggest creating controlled traps, using the environment, and leveraging our knowledge of their patterns. We can defend without escalating into war." The elders murmured, unsure if a human could truly understand the complexities of galactic threats. Yet Ethan's calm, methodical plan gained their reluctant approval. Then came the day of the ambush. The faction struck in full force, using a fleet of stealth ships to approach Zyphora's floating mountains. The palace alarms blared, and the council panicked. Leora turned to Ethan, fear gripping her heart. "Be careful," she whispered. "I always am," he replied with a faint smile. "But it's time to see how well humans can handle the unexpected." Ethan coordinated the palace defenses, predicting the enemy's movements before their ships fully appeared. He directed energy fields, repositioned Auran defensive units, and even used the floating terrain to create natural traps for the enemy. The attackers were clever, but Ethan's strategies outmatched them at every turn. At the ground level, a group of mercenaries attempted to infiltrate the palace once again, aiming directly for Leora. She felt fear for the first time in weeks, but Ethan's calm presence steadied her. "Trust me," he said softly. Using his knowledge of terrain and clever improvisation, Ethan guided Leora through secret passages. He anticipated the mercenaries' moves, leading them into dead ends and traps without harming them. It was a dance of intelligence and courage, a battle fought without direct violence. By the end of the confrontation, the galactic faction's plan had failed. Their ships retreated and the palace remained intact. Leora, standing beside Ethan on the highest balcony, felt a mixture of relief and admiration. "You were incredible," she said. I thought humans were harmless. I thought you couldn't match the Auran or defend this palace, but you were brilliant." Ethan looked out at the retreating ships, his expression calm. "Harmless? I don't think so. Humans survive by thinking differently. We use our minds, our creativity, and our adaptability. That's our strength." Leora's heart swelled with pride and awe. She realized that her husband's quiet demeanor, his gentle appearance, and his soft voice had misled her. He was not fragile, not weak, and not harmless. He was extraordinary, capable of facing dangers the Auran could only imagine. The palace slowly returned to normal, but the sense of vigilance remained. Leora now understood that the galaxy was full of threats, but she also knew that with Ethan by her side, She had a partner capable of facing them all. His human ingenuity, courage, and calm determination had changed her perception completely. As they stood together, watching the twin moons rise over the floating mountains, Leora realized something important. Humans were underestimated, not just by the Orin, but by the universe itself. Her husband's abilities were subtle, often hidden beneath a gentle, harmless exterior, but they were real, powerful, and effective. For the first time, she truly trusted him, not because of his strength in battle, but because of his mind, his heart, and his courage. The events of the past days had taught her that appearances could be deceiving, and that true strength often lay where no one expected it. And deep down, Leora knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon discover that the human she had married was no ordinary being, and that his harmlessness was nothing but a mask for extraordinary capability. Her journey with Ethan had entered a new stage, one filled with danger, challenge, and a growing understanding of the remarkable strength hidden in the most unexpected places. The day began like any other, with Zyphora's floating mountains glimmering under the light of its twin suns. The palace corridors were alive with quiet activity, Orin guards patrolling, servants moving gracefully, and Princess Leora attending to her duties. Yet a shadow of unease lingered, a memory of the previous attacks that refused to fade. Ethan, calm as ever, walked beside Leora through the crystal gardens. He had spent the morning studying energy flows in the palace shields, anticipating any weaknesses the attackers might exploit next. Leora watched him, marveling at his patience and focus. "You think too much," she said softly, though her tone carried admiration. Ethan smiled. "Thinking ahead keeps us safe, and besides, humans are good at noticing what others miss." Before Leora could respond, a sudden alarm blared through the palace. The Orin Council rushed to the control panels, faces pale. "They've breached the outer defenses," one elder shouted. "They're coming for the princess." Leora's heart raced. She had never felt such fear before. The palace, the floating mountains, the brilliant defense systems, all of it was vulnerable now. But before panic could take hold, Ethan's hand found hers, calm and steady. "Trust me," he said quietly. "Stay close." In an instant, the palace shifted into chaos. The intruders, more numerous and better equipped than the previous mercenaries, had infiltrated through an unexpected route. They moved with precision, targeting Leora directly. The Orin guards tried to intercept, but even their psychic powers could not predict the humans' unorthodox approach. Ethan acted immediately. Using his knowledge of the palace layout, he guided Leora through hidden passages and maintenance tunnels known only to a few. The intruders followed, but Ethan anticipated every move, placing subtle traps that slowed them without causing injury. The corridors seemed to bend to his understanding, and Leora felt herself both terrified and awestruck. They reached a narrow passage high above the crystal gardens. Ethan paused, listening carefully. "They're splitting up," he whispered. "Some will follow us, some will try the main route. We need to separate them and delay the others." Using a combination of Orin technology and human improvisation, he activated a series of hidden mechanisms. Doors slammed shut, walls shifted slightly, and energy fields diverted the intruders into dead ends. Leora could hardly believe it. This was not brute strength. This was intelligence, creativity, and precise timing. Suddenly, a group of intruders cornered them in a spiral staircase leading to a service platform. Leora's psychic senses flared, ready to attack, but Ethan remained calm. "Follow my lead," he said. He scanned the staircase and noticed a small panel connected to the energy flow of the stairs. With a few adjustments, he created a temporary barrier that forced the intruders backward without harming them. Then he grabbed Leora's hand and led her along a narrow ventilation shaft, bypassing the danger entirely. As they moved, Leora's fear gave way to admiration. Her husband, the human she had once believed harmless, was proving to be brilliant, courageous and resourceful beyond anything the Orin had imagined. The intruders regrouped. Realizing their attempt to capture the princess was failing, they fled into the surrounding terrain, planning to use Zyphora's unstable mountains to their advantage. Leora and Ethan had no choice but to pursue them. Outside the palace, the floating mountains were even more treacherous. Energy currents hummed unpredictably, and the gaps between the platforms were wide enough to be fatal if misjudged. Leora hesitated, fear gripping her. "Trust me," Ethan said, his calm voice steady. I've observed their patterns. I know how to reach them. He led her across the mountains using makeshift bridges, energy currents, and natural formations to navigate the terrain. Every step required precision, but Ethan moved with confidence, guiding Leora safely. She realized that his harmless appearance masked a mind that could adapt instantly to danger, solve problems creatively, and act decisively. They finally reached the location where the intruders had cornered a group of Oran scholars the faction had taken as hostages. The terrain was unstable, a series of narrow ledges and floating platforms over a deep chasm. Ethan assessed the situation quickly, formulating a plan. "We can't fight them directly, they're too well armed," he said. "But we can use the environment against them. Watch carefully." Using small energy charges from the palace that Ethan had carried with him, he created temporary energy barriers that redirected the intruders' movement. He triggered controlled collapses of unstable platforms, isolating the mercenaries without harm. Step by step, he guided the hostages to safety while keeping the intruders trapped and disoriented. Leora followed closely, her admiration growing with each action. She realized that humans' greatest strength lay not in power, but in creativity, courage, and the ability to think differently under pressure. The final confrontation came at the edge of a floating cliff. The intruders, realizing they were cornered, prepared for a direct attack. Ethan stepped forward, calm and unshaken. "Look around you," he said softly. "You've underestimated this terrain and you've underestimated us. There's no need for violence. Step back and you can leave safely." The intruders hesitated. Ethan's confidence, his calm observation, and his understanding of the environment created a presence far stronger than any weapon. Slowly, one by one, they retreated, recognizing that force alone could not win against intelligence and strategy. Leora's heart raced with awe. Her human husband, whom she had thought harmless, had single-handedly rescued hostages, outmaneuvered trained mercenaries, and defended the palace, all without killing anyone. His strength was subtle, hidden in observation, strategy, and courage. When they returned to the palace, the Oran Council was waiting, their faces filled with astonishment. "You accomplished what we could not," one elder said. "You outsmarted them without using force." Ethan smiled gently. "Strength isn't always about power. Sometimes it's about understanding, predicting, and acting at the right moment. That's how humans survive in dangerous situations." Leora took his hand, feeling a warmth she had never known before. "You were incredible," she whispered. "I thought humans were harmless. I thought you couldn't face this kind of danger, but you've changed everything." Ethan looked at her, his eyes calm and honest. "I'm not special. I just think differently, and sometimes thinking differently is stronger than anything else." The council nodded slowly, realizing that their perception of humans had been incomplete. For centuries they had believed humans were weak, fragile, and insignificant in the galaxy. Yet here was proof that courage, intelligence, and creativity could overcome dangers far beyond physical strength. As the twin suns set over Zephora, Leora and Ethan stood together on the balcony overlooking the floating mountains. The sky was painted with colors no human or Oran had names for, reflecting the calm after a storm. Leora realized that the galaxy was full of threats, but she no longer feared them, not as long as she had Ethan by her side. His harmless appearance had masked extraordinary ability, and she now understood the truth. Humans were underestimated, but their hidden strength could change everything. Her journey with Ethan had entered a new stage. The danger had tested them both, but it had also revealed the remarkable qualities that lay beneath appearances. Intelligence, courage, creativity, and trust, these were the powers humans wielded, and Leora now knew that together they could face anything. For the first time, she truly believed that her human husband, whom she had once underestimated, was not just capable of surviving Zephora's dangers, he was capable of shaping the future of the galaxy itself. The palace of Zephora was quiet, but a tense energy lingered in the air. Though the previous threats had been repelled, intelligence reports suggested that the galactic faction responsible for the attacks was preparing one final, larger assault. The council debated options from evacuation to defensive strikes, but Ethan had a different plan. "We don't need to fight blindly," he said calmly. "We need to predict their strategy, use the environment, and turn their confidence against them." Leora stood beside him, her mind racing. She had once believed humans were fragile, harmless creatures. Now she knew that her husband's quiet intelligence and courage made him a force unlike any other. The council reluctantly agreed to Ethan's plan, though skepticism lingered. Awe and pride made it difficult for them to fully trust a human, but they had no choice. That night the palace shimmered with energy fields, defensive barriers, and hidden traps. Ethan moved through the control panels, adjusting energy flows with a precision that amazed even the council's most experienced engineers. Every decision he made was deliberate, calculated, and effective. "Are you sure this will work?" Leora asked, watching him. Ethan smiled gently. "I can't guarantee everything, but I can anticipate more than anyone else. That's what humans do. We adapt, we observe, and we act when the moment is right." As the twin moons rose, the first signs of the assault appeared. Cloaked ships emerged from Zephora's atmosphere, approaching silently but with deadly intent. The council panicked, but Ethan remained calm, issuing instructions that guided the Auran defenses with efficiency and clarity. "Focus the energy shields here," he said. "Redirect the power flows to those platforms and keep the gaps covered." The Auran obeyed, their disbelief slowly replaced by trust. Under Ethan's guidance, the palace defenses became a coordinated, intelligent system, anticipating attacks before they happened. Meanwhile, on the ground, a group of mercenaries attempted to infiltrate the palace, aiming directly for Princess Leora. Leora's heart raced, but Ethan's presence steadied her. "Stay close," he whispered, taking her hand. They navigated the palace corridors with confidence, bypassing traps and obstacles. Ethan's knowledge of patterns, terrain, and timing allowed them to move unseen. Every step he took was calculated, turning danger into advantage. Leora realized again that his harmless appearance had been misleading. His intelligence and creativity were extraordinary. They reached the palace gardens where the intruders were regrouping. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. "We can't fight them directly," he said, "but we can use the environment." With swift action, he activated concealed energy barriers, redirected floating platforms, and used the terrain to isolate the intruders. They were trapped without harm, unable to advance. Leora watched in awe as her human husband manipulated the situation with skill and precision. The palace fleet engaged the enemy ships, guided by Ethan's strategic commands. Every move anticipated the attackers' reactions, countering their plans before they could act. The intruders, confident in their superiority, were outmaneuvered at every turn. Leora felt a surge of pride. The humans, her people, and even the palace itself had become an unstoppable force when guided by observation, creativity, and courage. Ethan had transformed what the Auran considered fragile into a power greater than raw strength. The battle reached its climax as the enemy commander tried one final strike, targeting the floating mountains that held the palace's outer defenses. Leora watched as Ethan analyzed the trajectory, the energy flows, and the environmental variables in seconds. "We'll use their momentum against them," he said, calm as ever. "Draw them toward the unstable ridge. Their own attack will contain them." With precision, he coordinated the palace shields and energy fields, creating a trap that redirected the enemy ships into the unstable ridge. One by one, their fleet became trapped, immobilized without destruction. The final strike failed. The enemy had underestimated the humans' ability to think differently, to adapt, and to act with ingenuity. Leora's heart raced with relief and admiration. She had never been more certain of anything in her life. Her human husband was extraordinary. The palace celebrated the victory, but more importantly, the Auran Council gained a new understanding. They realized that humans were not weak or fragile. Their strength was subtle, hidden in intelligence, creativity, and courage. Ethan had demonstrated that what seemed harmless could be the most powerful force of all. Leora stood with him on the highest balcony, watching the stars shimmer above Zephora. "I was wrong," she admitted softly. "I thought humans were harmless, fragile. I never understood. Until now." Ethan looked at her, his calm eyes filled with warmth. "Humans survive by thinking differently. That's what makes us strong. It's not about appearances, it's about action, observation, and courage." She nodded, understanding fully. "You've changed everything. Not just for me, but for my people. They now see what I've known all along." The council approached, their faces respectful and thoughtful. "Princess," one elder said, "your husband has proven that humans are capable of things we could not imagine. We owe him gratitude and respect. Leora squeezed Ethan's hand, smiling. Yes, and they must understand that strength can take many forms. Sometimes it is quiet, hidden, and underestimated. Ethan smiled, but his mind remained focused. There's more to learn, more to prepare for. But for now, Zephora is safe, and that is enough. Over the following weeks, the palace repaired its damages, strengthened defenses, and reinforced alliances. Leora and Ethan continued their work together, showing the Orin and other galactic races that cooperation, intelligence, and courage could overcome any threat. Humans, once underestimated, became a symbol of ingenuity and resilience. Leora often walked through the crystal gardens with Ethan, reflecting on how much had changed. "You've taught me so much," she said. "About humans, about strength, about courage." Ethan took her hand, smiling gently. "I've only done what any human would do. Adapt, think, and act. But it's wonderful to see that it matters." As the twin moons rose over the floating mountains, their light reflecting across the palace, Leora realized that appearances could be deceiving. Her human husband, who had seemed harmless at first, was a force of ingenuity and courage that no one could ignore. Humans were underestimated, yes, but underestimated strength often proved the most powerful of all. The galaxy had seen only a glimpse of what humans could achieve, guided by intelligence, creativity, and perseverance, and Princess Leora, who had once doubted, now understood fully. She had married not a fragile, harmless human, but an extraordinary partner capable of changing the future. Standing together on the balcony, overlooking the glowing mountains and shimmering sky, Leora and Ethan felt a quiet pride. They had survived danger, protected Zephora, and shown that true strength lies in courage, ingenuity, and the ability to act when it matters most. The palace, the Orin Council, and the galaxy would remember this moment, not for the violence of the battle, but for the brilliance, bravery, and cleverness of a human who had proven that even the seemingly harmless could be extraordinary. And in that moment, as the stars twinkled above and the palace lights reflected in their eyes, Leora knew one thing for certain: appearances could deceive, but courage and intelligence could never be underestimated. Her journey with Ethan, the human she had once underestimated, had reached a new understanding. Together they had changed the perception of humans in the galaxy forever. The universe was vast, full of danger and wonder, but with humans like Ethan, there was no challenge too great, no enemy too clever, and no future too uncertain to face. They had proven that humans, quiet and unassuming at first glance, were capable of greatness beyond imagination. And Zephora, once skeptical, now recognized the truth. Strength is not always visible, and brilliance can hide behind the most unassuming faces. For Princess Leora and her human husband, the adventure was far from over, but for now peace had returned, and the galaxy had seen the true potential of humanity.